Jimmy Devlin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it, man.
It is such an honor to have you on. Jimmy, for our listeners who
Yeah.
may not be familiar with you and your work,
hmm
who are you and what do you do?
All right. So that's a little bit of a question, really. So most people would find it interesting that I played 10 years in the NFL, 8 years with the New England Patriots, two in the beginning of my career with the Cincinnati Bengals, won three Super Bowls, played fullback up in New England. But really, I think the story of who I am kind of starts before that, way before that. I grew up in the southeastern Pennsylvania area. I was always, football centric in my focus. Ended up going to Brown University, studied mechanical engineering there, but was also priorities on football. Had a little bit of a arduous journey to get to the NFL. Went undrafted. I wasn't even signed as a priority free agent or a free agent alone. I got to try out with the Cleveland Browns as a 3-4 outside linebacker, was a fish out of water in Rob Ryan's defense at the time. And they let me go after 2 days of a 3-day workout, and then ended up playing arena football for the Oklahoma City Yard Dogs with a Z. And then from there went to play with the Florida Tuskers in the UFL, which is not the UFL that exists now. It was once removed, and that was a great experience for me. That's where I made the transition to fullback, and then from there got picked up by Cincinnati on their practice squad for a year and a half, and then went to New England in 2012. Right now, I am a entrepreneur in the making. I think there's always meat on the bone to learn about business, and so I'm ever evolving in that front. But I'm also a father of four and a proud husband to my wife of 11 years. So
Wow.
yeah.
Dude, first off, incredible. So much to unpack there. I would love to get into how a kid from Boyertown
Yeah.
goes to Brown, plays defensive line, is an
Yeah.
engineering major, then winds up playing fullback for the New England Patriots with basically the greatest quarterback, greatest coach ever, wins three Super Bowls. Crazy. Your journey is unbelievable. The podcast is called Built Not Born,
hmm
and I think you show that as much as any guest on here. Let's start here. So you're in Boyertown High School. How you decide to go to Brown? How's that happen?
Sure. Yeah. So coming out of Boyertown, I guess it was like junior year, I started getting some like interest in recruiting. So obviously I was getting some letters, just like the general letters that big time schools send out to everybody, right? They just kind of mass distribute all this recruiting material, hoping to get some feedback in return. And I think I got romanced a little bit by that, and I was like, oh man, I'm going to be a big time D1 star. I was going to visits to my first visit ever in college recruiting was to Michigan for their junior day. And I was just, starstruck up there. It was incredible. We actually went and saw Chad Henney's first start as a
Oh, yeah.
Michigan Wolverine as a freshman. So going up there, I was like, oh man, I'm a Michigan man through and through, right? I'm going to be wearing the maize and blue, for the next 5 years, but that just didn't happen. So I was taking visits. I was trying to find where I really wanted to play defense in college, and took visits to Michigan, Duke, Connecticut. I kind of kept getting like I started my journey like real high, and then it just kind of kept going down the notches until finally it was like pretty evident that I wasn't going to get a Division 1, like a big time Division 1 scholarship. So then I kind of pivoted and started focus on, let me leverage football to get the best education I can.
Yeah.
And I was a good student at Boyertown, all AP courses, had like over a 4.0 GPA, always good in math and science. So I knew I wanted to do engineering, right? So then I focused on the Ivy League. And from the Ivy League, the two um, institutions that were most interested in me boiled down to Brown and Princeton.
Mhm.
I took visits. I got more and more engaged with their teams, and Princeton kind of more or less said like, hey, look, if you come here and you study engineering, it's going to be very difficult for you to juggle both. They said it's not impossible, like we're not saying like you can't come here and do this, but it's going to be very difficult. Brown, on the other hand, was like, we just had a guy graduate doing engineering, the same path that you just took. They have the open curriculum at Brown, so it's just a little bit more enticing and they worked with you a little bit more. So ipso facto, I took both my official visits, took more of like a connection feel from the guys at Brown, the football team that was there at the time. And that ended up making my choice, man. I went to Brown and studied engineering. It was an incredible experience for me. It really taught me about time management and, flexibility and learning not only like how to do the work that I had to do, but like the best way to do it, right? Like it wasn't all just like hitting the books and just doing it. Like I had to learn the best system for me to accomplish what it was that I needed to do. And so that I think really helped me in the long run.
When you learn to manage time, that's a game
Mm-hmm.
changer, right? Because in high school, you have so much time and you waste.
Yep.
So I look back before I had kids and yeah,
Yeah.
I was living, even time I'm living with my college roommates after college, and we're just wasting so much
Oh,
time.
yeah. I
You're
know.
watching reruns of the show you watched 6 times. You're just screwing off. It's so wild.
Yeah.
You mentioned Michigan, this quick Michigan thing, like you're there with Chad Henne. You go to the big house. First time you're there, you'll walk towards it. You're like, that's
Yeah.
not too big. Like,
Yeah. Cause
like,
it's
like
sunken in.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, I thought I was expecting, it looks like the first year, it looks like the Wachovia Center going to a
Yeah.
Sixers game. Like, it's
Yeah.
not that big. Then you step in and it kind of goes down.
Yep.
Like, damn, this is a big
Oh my
stadium.
God.
Let's
I
go.
know. I know. And just to start there in the biggest stadium in the nation,
Yeah.
I mean, it was wild, dude. I mean, saw Chad Henne take on Ben Roethlisberger was at Miami of
Whoa,
Ohio at the time.
crazy. What a
Yeah,
game.
Braylon Edwards called it like a one-handed touchdown. I mean, I'll never forget that. That was like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And it ended up being a once-in-a-lifetime experience because I didn't go there. So,
How about this? So you're at Brown, you're defensive line, right? So then
mhm.
you graduate. So it's senior year, right? So
Yeah.
I want to get to your epic IG post. You did maybe a year or two back about your draft day experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right? Everyone's posting their stuff. Right? It's senior year. So what do you think? So you're playing defensive line for Brown. What do you think is
Mhm.
going to happen or hoping is going to happen in draft time? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I had always kind of had so junior year at Brown, I had a pretty strong year. Like I was looking like there might be a chance to play at the next level. I'd always had those dreams and aspirations. I just didn't really know how feasible it was. Junior year came and went. I put my name in the hat for our junior day where, scouts come and kind of just check us out, do like just the measurables. Wasn't real intense and got a little bit of feedback. But senior year, I started kind of ramping it up. The first game of the season, I had like an epic game. Ended up winning like the National Defensive Player of the Week, like doing all this good shit against Stony Brook University. And then from there, it kind of like lulled off. Unfortunately, I don't know if I was like in my own head, like, oh man, I'm him, But that didn't turn out to be the case. But I had a solid year. And then athletically, I wasn't going to wow anybody with my athleticism. Really, what I made my bread on was just like hard work and tenacity. Like I was just one of those guys that was the same player in the first minute as I was in the 60th. And
Mhm.
I think that kind of was always like my like fourth quarter, I'd come on and my pass rush moves would start to work, and then I'd clean up at the end of the game when everyone was tired.
Mhm.
Um, and that I think I just like kind of gained through endurance work, through training as a high school and college athlete, just always trying to go that extra mile, push myself a little bit harder so that I was better prepared. But then, so senior year kind of came and went. I had a hard time finding an agent to represent me. Ended up just kind of working a relationship with my neighbors growing up in Boyertown. The mother of four boys that I was all friends with, I grew up with, her cousin was a NFL agent, and they were at a family party. This is a real story. They were at a family party together one weekend, and they're talking, and he goes, "Oh, I'm going up to Boston this weekend." She's like, "Oh, what are you going up there for?" "I'm going to the Harvard Brown game to scout a player, David Howard, who is my three tech. I played DN. He was right inside me. Big physical dude, 310 pounds, like rock solid, all muscle. Had offers coming out of high school to like Big Ten schools, Iowa, Michigan State. Ended up wanting to do track, came to Brown, to do track, but then we talked him into doing football as well. And he was just a physical specimen. Anyways, she goes, "Oh, my neighbor plays at Brown, number 44, James Devlin. Look out for him." So he goes up. I have a really good game, had a sack, a couple TFLs. We ended up losing, but it was the first night game at Harvard Stadium in Ivy League history, and ended up doing well. So he kind of we started getting in contact. He wasn't really at first, and I learned this later, he wasn't really looking to represent me, but he just wanted to kind of help me out a little bit. But then the more I guess we started talking and the more he got to know me, he said, "You know what, I'll take a flyer on this guy." And then when that decision got made, when I had that representation, it started like, "Hey, look, you're not really going to wow anybody with your athleticism. Your stats coming out of an Ivy League school aren't that impressive. Like, we're going to have to get creative." So we started putting film out to NFL teams as, "Hey, I can play tight end, I can play linebacker, I can play defensive end, I can long snap, I can play fullback, all this shit." And eventually, you know, really like someone gave me a shot as 3-4 outside linebacker just on a whim. And then that didn't work out. And then honestly, the reason I started really believing in myself as a fullback was my agent's name is Jim Ulrich. He's from South Jersey. He lives in Mount Laurel. He has a really good relationship with the Garrett family, who went to Princeton, and they were all connected in Dallas,
Mhm.
right? So
Yep.
Jim Garrett was like a
Yeah.
legendary scout for Dallas. He lives up in Monmouth Beach, New Jersey. So my agent Jim calls me one day. He goes, "Hey, I want you to work out for Jim Garrett in his backyard, and he's going to give you the nod whether he thinks you can do this on the offensive side of the ball." So I go up there, drive like 2.5 hours, work out with a couple high school kids. We got a high school quarterback throwing me routes. I'm doing drills as a fullback and had never really played the position
You never
before.
played fullback before.
Never. I mean, a little bit in high school. I mean, it was like very basic shit, like, "Hey, just go hit this linebacker."
Go get
And at the
somebody.
time, I was a big high school player, so it looked good, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And then, yeah, then I went and worked out for Jim Garrett. He gave my agent like his stamp of approval, and then he kind of said like, "All right, maybe this is something." So then I went undrafted. Nobody called. Went tried out for the Cleveland Browns. Didn't even make it to the third day to Sunday. They let me go Saturday night. And then lo and behold, man, I'm down in Sea Isle with a couple buddies on a weekend in the summer 2010. And my agent calls me and he goes, "Hey, I got you a tryout with the UFL team, the Florida Tuskers, which I'd never heard of." And he goes, "You're trying out as a fullback, man. So like just go down there, do what you're told. Don't tell anybody that you never played before and see what happens." And so that Monday I was on a flight down to Orlando and went and did my thing, worked out. They ended up signing me. And then 4 weeks later I was a starting fullback. So
Wow. Was that with Jay Gruden? Was Jay
yeah,
Gruden
Jay
down
Gruden
there?
was he was the head coach there. And then
Wow.
funny thing, so Cincinnati signs me after that year to their practice squad, and then lo and behold, they signed Jay Gruden as their offensive coordinator the next
Wow.
year.
How
So
great's that? So
yeah,
just out of just sheer luck, just where
yeah,
you
sheer
go.
luck. Yeah,
Wow. So then Jay comes there, right? So I mean, you obviously
yeah,
have a relationship with him. So
yeah.
how's that? So you're with Cincinnati, what, for like 2 years, maybe something like that?
Yeah, I was there for the finish of 2010 season, so like November, late November, early December through the end of that year. And then all of 2011, I spent that entire season on practice squad.
Who's the
Um,
QB then for Cincinnati at that time?
that so the first year it was that we had quite a locker room, and Carson Palmer was the starting quarterback.
Wow.
Jason was his backup. We had guys. We had Ochocinco, To.
Oh,
You know,
you're with that.
yeah,
Whoa, man.
Pac-Man Jones, Dahani Jones, Tank Johnson. Like we
Damn.
had an absolute star-studded in both good and bad ways style locker room. The next year was Andy Dalton's first year.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Wow. You had
spent
so much name. I mean, so many names and
yeah,
talent in that room. Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Oh my God, it was it was wild. Some of the team meetings, dude, just to like look around and be like, "Oh my God, I'm here with sitting next to T Ho in
Wow.
team meetings." It was pretty crazy.
So with T.O., right? So you grew up in Philly. When you were
Mhm.
like grade school, high school, were you an Eagles
Yeah.
fan?
Oh, big time.
Okay.
Big
So
time.
then watching the Super Bowl, I think it was '04
Yeah.
maybe, where
Yeah.
T.O. like, had the
Yeah.
broken
Against the
foot and come.
Patriots. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, against the Patriots. And like, I don't want to fast forward. I want to get to the point where like you're literally watching, like, what grade are you in 2004? Where are
I
you at?
was like a sophomore in high school.
You're like a oh my gosh, sophomore in high school. You're watching T.O., right?
Hmm.
And then you're in the locker room with T.O., but then
Yeah.
fast forward, I don't know, a couple of years later, you're
Yeah.
actually in the huddle with
Yeah.
Brady and Belichick and
Yeah.
then the Super Bowl.
Oh,
That's
I know, man. I
insane.
mean, believe, dude, watching that, I remember where I was like it was yesterday. I was in my friend Sean Malloy's basement watching the 2004 Super Bowl with the Eagles versus Patriots. I was a huge Eagles fan. I mean, growing up like in the late 90s, early 2000s, which was an epic era of
Yeah.
Eagles
Oh,
football,
crazy.
you
All
know? I
NFC
mean,
championships,
yeah,
right?
with like the whole McNabb, Westbrook era, like
Yeah.
that was incredible. Every year was the NFC championship. So I was huge Eagles fan. And then when the Patriots beat the Eagles, I was like,
You're
oh
like,
man,
yeah, like it's
Tom Brady's
horrible.
yeah. I was like, Tom Brady's a pussy, like all this stuff. And then, fast forward 10 years and I'm in the locker room with him. But
So
um,
crazy.
yeah,
So
it
when you
was
were so fullback, do you remember the moment like you said your agent's like, don't tell anyone you never played fullback
yeah,
before, just get on the plane and hit somebody.
yeah.
Do you remember the moment where you're on the field and you're like, you know what, I'm a fucking fullback. Like I can play this. Like, is there a moment or a play like, you know what, this isn't an experiment anymore. Like you said, I'm him. I'm a
Yeah,
fullback.
yeah. So it was, I would say that first season. So I started the season as in the UFL, I'm talking, as a backup fullback, which was kind of odd that they would even carry like a backup fullback. I just played special teams, but I was just trying to earn my keep. And then 2 games into the year, our starting fullback gets vertigo traveling to Vegas, right?
Whoa.
We were going to play the Las Vegas Locomotives, and
Love
he
the
gets
name.
vertigo, can't play, and they go, all right, James, you're starting fullback this week, and I went in there, dude, and things just like started to click. I started to like be able to read. I remember when like feeling like the game slowed down. And that was always a thing. Like especially when you start a new position, things are happening in front of your eyes. You can't even fathom what you need to think about, right? But then I remember as the game started going on, the speed of the game slowed down to me, and I started to be able to like see and feel where I needed to be, what I needed to do with my body. And there was a particular block against the Sacramento Mountain Lions. I think they were the Mountain Lions or something like that. So a couple weeks after that, where I hit a guy on a lead block and I bent and I like caved my whole face mask in, but I made like a great block. We sprang the play. And I remember after that, like, oh man, like this is the life of a fullback. Like I think I've officially kind of like, you know, got my cherry wet,
Wow.
and popped my cherry.
That
So,
is all. That's so
yeah,
awesome. And then like, but then you think, well, then you're off to the Patriots winning 3 Super Bowls. You go to the Bengals, right? You
yeah,
get waived by them. Even the Pats sign you want. You actually got released by them at some point, right?
yeah, yeah. So that was I was still trying to. I mean, hey, life as a fullback is not glamorous, man, because there's over more than half the league doesn't even carry them. So I'm just trying to. Yeah, I was cut in Cincinnati after the fourth preseason game, like during final roster cut down day, and
Did you
um,
see that coming, or was that a surprise?
I kind of saw it coming. We had a pretty solid fullback that taught me a lot about playing. His name's Chris Presley. I'm still like very good friends with him. He was instrumental in like teaching me how to play and the way I played. He was a very physical guy, like 6 foot, 260, like just, born to be a fullback, but also a great guy. He's an incredible story. You want to talk about, he grew up in Camden, went to Wisconsin 4-0 his whole 4 years. And then he ended up playing like 7 years, I think, in the NFL, Cincinnati and Tampa. He's a great guy. I still see him every year. I go to the Super Bowl. We end up spending some time together.
So it's not like the Pats signed you and then you
Yeah.
won 3 Super Bowls. They actually released you, right? So
Yeah.
when like someone like the Bengals or the Pats, they release you. Is it like that movie? Hey, go see coach and bring your playbook? Is it like
Yeah.
that? Or what's it like when they let you go? What is that
Yeah,
process like?
that's exactly what it's like. I remember final cut down day in Cincinnati, like waking up, my butthole was super tight and just did not want to see my phone light up. And of course it did. And they tell you like, hey, Coach Lewis wants you to come in and talk to him. And so you bring your stuff. And like at the time I was living out of a backpack, on a bag. And so bring my stuff because I knew what was going to happen. And when you get in the facility, they have these admin guys just kind of like to escort you up to the coach. And we called them the Grim Reaper. You never wanted to see them. You never wanted to be called out by them. But on that day, they did. And I remember talking to Coach Lewis, and he was like as supportive and uplifting as you can be in that situation. But he's also got to do the hard job of crushing a young man's dreams, right? So it's a tough room. I remember like getting teary eyed, but he did say, you keep working the way you do. I could see you having a nice career in the NFL. And so hearing those words from a guy who was a head coach in the NFL meant a lot at the time. Yeah. And then I ended up landing in New England. Spent that 2012 year on the practice squad. They brought me up for 4 games, which was nice of them. I only played in one, but I was on the active roster for 4 weeks, which was great exposure. Great to like travel with the team, feel like I was like really a part of it. And then going into training camp the next year, again, the question around the fullback position is always, are they going to carry one? Because up till that point, they hadn't had a fullback on the roster for some time. And so now it's like they're trying to reshuffle the deck. Josh McDaniels was always a supporter of the fullback, but they just didn't really find someone to fill that role for him. So I was hoping that they were bringing other veteran fullbacks from around the league in. 2013 training camp, I have a great camp. I make the team past, final cut down day. So I'm like, super high. And then that Monday we practice, and after practice, they come and get me and tell me coach was yeah. So I made final cut down day was Saturday. Sunday was a day off. Monday, come in and practice, and they cut me Monday, right? I get in the car. I had a Camaro at the time, load my Camaro up at the drive all the way back down to Jersey to see my wife, Jenny, who. And then that Thursday, they call me and they're like, hey, come back up. We're going to sign you back to the team. You're going to play this Sunday. So,
Whoa.
Yeah. So then
Total surprise? Is that a total surprise?
Total surprise. They told me that they were just trying to figure out, like they were shuffling some of the bottom of the roster, which is a very typical thing in New England. They're constantly signing guys, seeing how they can keep guys around. I just didn't really know that situation. So I just like left thinking like I'll get a call from somebody, but I was right back up there Thursday and then started my first NFL game that Sunday against Buffalo up in Buffalo.
In that Buffalo, doing some research, you crushed a dude on a kickoff.
Yeah.
And I believe Belichick started the meeting off showing your clip, right? Is that fair? Did you tell that story? Yeah, I'm doing some research, man. I got someone like you on the show. I'm doing some research.
Yeah, opening. So the first like legitimate as a starting NFL player, my first snap was a kickoff return, and I like peeled back and trapped one of the guys coming down on kickoff and absolutely just smashed him. And then the following, so I guess it would have been Monday, the next day, Bill opened up the meeting with that play. And so that was a nice thing.
How surreal is that?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is
so. It was a great game, man. We were running the ball well. Stephen Ridley was our running back at the time, and we had some success, running some outside zone against Buffalo at the time. And that was a great game.
And then was there a Monday night game in San Fran too? You had a big play.
The first game I played in was it was either a Monday night or a Sunday night against San Fran. And there was a big play, but it was negative for me.
That's right. You had a holding play. That's right. Yeah. So So to actually get in, and then actually you could you tell that story?
So that was a tough game, man. That was like Colin Kaepernick was like at his peak. They came in. It was I think it was Sunday night. It was a rainy Sunday night against San Francisco. They were a good team. Yeah, it's like kind of a back and forth game. Fourth quarter, they're punting. I'm on the punt return team, and they kick it. I got to hold up Navarro Bowman, who's much more athletic than me. He kind of shakes me. I hold on to him, and they throw the flag.
Oh,
Wes Welker was our returner at the time. He had like a nice little return, and of course, my hold just like negated that. So we're back. I think he caught it on like the 15. So now we're inside the 10 to start like a fourth quarter drive, which we needed to score, you know? And so I remember coming off the field, and our special teams coordinator at the time, Scotty O'Brien, big time supporter of me, but not at that moment.
not at that moment.
I just tried to keep my eyes like, I was obviously like harder on myself than any of the coaches would ever be, but yeah, that was a pretty low moment. And I was like, man, I don't know how long I'm gonna last if I keep doing that stuff.
Because you're like, I mean, at best, you're like on the roster. Like
Yeah, I'm like
you're
53rd.
yeah, you're like walking
Yeah,
on ice. You got thin
yeah,
ice, right? And
yeah,
you're looking for thicker ice to walk on. And that
yeah,
whole like first play, the holding play, that's what's that feel like? I mean, I'm feeling that, and that happened
yeah.
years ago. I
Oh,
feel it right
dude, I
now.
know. I mean, it
Oh my
was,
gosh.
and not only that play, but I'm on like kickoff return. And like I said before, the speed of the game. I
Yeah.
remember like the first couple kickoff returns going, I was always a wedge guy, right? So like I'd run down, like lock hands with a guy, turn around and be like, what? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on? Everyone's flying around. Like, I don't even know who's who. And then finally, like the more and more you do it, the more your eyes are like trained to figure it all out. But man, that was definitely like a welcome to the NFL moment. That whole game,
Wow.
man, I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing out here.
That is crazy. So when you come in from the practice squad and you start, all of a sudden you start playing, you start doing special teams and playing. When you
Yep.
meet someone as such a legend like Brady, do you just see him in the meetings? Is it like a team bond where you see him all the time? Like, what's that like when you come and you meet someone at that level? Does that make sense, the question?
Yeah, and that's something that I think catches a lot of guys off guard, and you hear about it. Like now that he's past his playing days, and I was up there earlier in June for his Patriots Hall of Fame induction.
Hmm.
And one of the hearing from guys is just how personable and how like approachable he is. So I feel like everyone has the same story. First day you're in New England and you're being like chauffeured around, and here's the training room, here's the meal room, all this stuff. And everyone always remembers the first time they see Tom in that facility.
Hmm.
And he walks up to everybody, does the same thing, puts his hand out, shakes his hand. Hey, I'm Tom. We're happy to have you. Like, really look forward to like working with you. And that's just who he is, man. Like, he was at that time that I met him, he was a 3-time Super Bowl champion, multiple time NFL MVP, had, Giselle was his girlfriend at the
Crazy.
time. They weren't married. Like, he could have been as like pompous of an asshole as you've ever met
Hmm.
because of his accolades. Like, he
Yep.
earned it, but
Yep.
he was not. And that was something that I've seen, like, and then meeting his parents, like I can see why he is the way he is. Like, he's just as down to earth as a person as anybody else. Like, he
Hmm.
would be sitting here having a normal conversation with us, and you wouldn't think anything of it, that he was like, Tom Brady, who Tom we know him to be. And so seeing that as an example, like first day, I think it sets everyone's like barometer as to like, all right, this is how I have to operate.
Hmm.
Like, I'm here doing this. Like, it's nothing's bigger than the team. Like, if
Hmm.
Tom Brady can put himself on the level to just be normal and be a teammate to everyone and just be approachable, like, I'm certainly not going to be any more important than the next guy. So it was just always like a team first environment. And Bill was big on that. Like, nothing was more important than the success and the betterment of the team. He had to make super hard decisions throughout his 25 years as a head coach. You always heard him say, we have to do what's best for the team.
Hmm.
And I mean, Bill showed it, Tom showed it. Like, everyone was team first, and that's what we did. I think that's why we were successful.
Wow, like leaders lead, they set the culture, they set the tone, and then
Yes, sir.
people under the leaders, you just follow them, you emulate what they do, and that just brings
Yep.
That makes a great team, great culture, and then the success you guys had up there speaks for itself.
Yeah,
Before we go on, I want to talk about some epic Super Bowls you're in, but
sure.
fullback position. What the heck happened to the fullback position? So I remember growing up, I'm an Eagle fan. The first fullback I remember is Keith Byers, right? I was
Yeah,
kind of like in grade school, and Buddy Ryan had Keith Byers, and
yeah.
he could catch, he could block, he could
Uh-huh.
run. Then back in the day, Tom Rathman with the 49ers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like, I mean,
yeah,
such a beast. I think he was blocking for Roger Craig.
yeah.
Then it's like then it's almost disappearing. Like,
Hmm.
what happened to it? I think you go back to it. I don't think team defenses are ready for it. How small they got. I don't know. What
Yeah.
happened to the fullback? I guess that's my question.
You you just you just touched on it. I think my belief is football is a very cyclic game, right? So there's always so much scheming going on between offenses and defenses, and it's really like not only at the like one game at a time, like one opponent versus the other opponent. It's like a mass scale thing across all of football,
Mhm.
really. So I feel like schemes kind of take identity of their developers, then certain schemes start to have success over like the overarching theme of like what defense. So let me just break it down on a little bit more understandable scale because I feel like I'm talking too spacey right now. I feel like there's like certain coordinators or certain ideologies will come in the game of football. They just start to develop like the identity of certain teams that have a lot of success. And then everybody starts to kind of take from them and try to put it into their scheme. And so then there's like certain like overarching themes in the game of football as a whole, like professional, college, high school,
Mhm.
everything. And I think back in like the 80s, 90s, a lot of teams just got big tight ends, fullbacks, big running backs, and they would just pound the ball at you, just boom, boom, boom. Defenses then, in order to combat that, they got big linebackers, 250, 60-pound guys that could just come up and stuff holes. And so then what do offenses do? Well, we're not going to just keep running into a brick wall. We got to start spreading the ball out, passing to the edge, playing basketball on grass and just getting out into the exterior of our formations and start throwing a ball. What do defenses do to combat that? They get a little smaller, they
Mhm.
get faster, they get more athletic guys on the field. There's linebacker positions instead of being 250, 260, they start 220,
Mhm.
210. They got like safeties playing linebackers. Well, what do offenses do eventually against that? Is they start getting big again and they just start running the ball. I mean, we had a lot of success in New England later in the years. Like we played in the last playoff run, we played the Chargers. And at the time, they kept running this dime defense where they would put 6 D backs out on the field, even against like base personnel, like 21 personnel. So knowing that, we were like, all right, well, we're going to run the ball. And we ended up running the ball for like 4 touchdowns that game. I mean, we were like running right through them. They were putting little guys out on the field, and it's just like, all right, well, thank you. Like we'll just 7, 10 yards at a chunk. And so I think if this all is true, and again, this is just my theory, if this is true, I think offenses will start to get a little bigger, start getting more to just pounding the rock and just like
Mhm.
beating teams down. And you're starting to see it a little bit. I feel like you're starting to see teams with that tough identity.
Mhm.
I think New England's doing it right now. Like we're
Mhm.
running the ball pretty well these past 2 games. Detroit runs the ball. They're a tough outfit. New Orleans runs the ball. They're a tough outfit. Like I think you're starting to see this come to head a little bit, where if you can just run the ball, play good defense,
Mhm.
like you're going to be in a lot of games. And so I think it'll come back. I think it'll start to shift back to that older style of football, just because at this point, like I think you can take advantage of some defenses and their scheme to do it. So we'll see, man. We'll see
Yeah.
if my
Uh,
theory is correct.
Life is cyclical, right? Everything from
Yeah.
business to
Yeah.
everything's cyclical. And is there anything more like demoralizing in football than the other team just running the ball down your
Oh,
throat? Like eight,
yeah.
9 yards, 8, 9 yards, 8, 9. It's just
Yeah.
demoralizing. Then the defense is dead in the third quarter
Yeah.
because you're just blowing them up. And then
Yeah.
you play action and you have 9 guys come at the ball and like the wide receivers naked down the field, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just run the ball, stop the run. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
1980s football, but it still works, man, right?
It really does, man. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can kind of cut it up and dress it up, but at the end of the day, football is a very simple game, man. And if you can just control the clock, get yards when you need them, and even if it's not pretty, even if you're not Patrick Mahomes throwing behind your back and
Yeah.
stuff, like sometimes take the ball and give it to a running back and let him get 5 yards. That's a beautiful play in the game of football, man. So yeah, I think I think, hopefully it comes back around.
So I think it's a good transition. Two games I just want to get your insight on, talking
Sure.
about when you should run the ball and not pass. Let's go the 2014 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So here you are, Patriots versus the Seahawks, right? We got Russell Wilson, you got Tom Brady. You
Mhm.
guys are there. Anyway, let's fast forward to the very end. I mean, they're on what, the 2, 3, 4 yard line,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
Marshawn Lynch maybe ran to the 2, and like
Yep.
they're going to give it to Marshawn, and the game's done.
Yes, sir.
Take me from there, man. What you
Oh
see?
man,
What you
yeah. I mean,
notice?
this is great timing because on Sunday, they obviously the Patriots played the Seahawks, and so they had all the Super Bowl 49 players come back. We had like a little reunion, and so I just saw Malcolm, who obviously made that incredible play down on the goal line. But really, a lot of people, and Bill will tell you this too. One of the most impressive plays was the play before Malcolm's play. Dante Hightower, who is a absolute physical specimen, like one of the best, just all around linebackers I've ever seen. He was playing like essentially without a shoulder. Like the guy was, just so battered at that point in the year, but he like put his body on the line, ended up taking Marshawn Lynch out, who had a full head of steam on like a zone play to the left, just kind of cut him down at the knees, took him down on the 2. And then, yeah, we all thought like, oh shit. And like they got at least 2 to 3 tries at the end zone. Like this might be all. And I mean, at that point, we didn't have much time. Like if they did score to really put together a drive. So things were not looking good, man. And I remember like being on the sideline, obviously like just kind of holding my breath, like please hold up, please hold up. But things weren't looking good. Like there was a little bit of gloom, on our sideline because it was a great game, man. Like back and forth, just great defenses and just one of those old school great football games. And for it to come down to that, but hey, that's football, right? And then all of a sudden, it's just like Malcolm makes this great play. You almost like can't even believe it. Like this kid who, a couple months ago was working at a Popeye's chicken. Like this is incredible. Like the human drama behind that play is one of the most special things I've ever been a part of. And then let alone the play itself, for him to like break on it the way he did and make that like interception on his back hip. I mean, it was incredible. And then you also put in that we ran that exact play on Friday in practice in our like red zone preparation, and Malcolm got beat on the play. Like it was kind of like a pick.
Mm-hmm.
And Malcolm ended up like not playing it well in practice. Obviously got coached up by one of the best to ever do it, if not the best. And then lo and behold, biggest moment, biggest game of the year, and he steps up and does that. And so just all the stories, all the things that happened to culminate into that one moment, dude, it's that was my favorite Super Bowl. It was also my first, so I had nothing to like measure it up against. I just thought it was like the most incredible experience, all the pageantry, everything, but then not only that, but just like the entire game, how it unfolded and how it ended. But it was insane.
So crazy. And if that play too, it's one thing great noticing the play, right? And there's a
Yeah.
great YouTube clip showing him getting beat 2, 3 times in practice on
Yeah.
that play, right?
Yeah.
They show like the coach's film or something where he was
Yep.
getting beat on the exact play.
Yeah.
But then like it's one thing breaking that play up, but he caught the ball and that was not an easy catch. Like he's like catching it on the side, like crazy. So at the end, what I do remember is watching that, right? So I'm like watching for you. I knew you're in the game. And I remember at the end, you guys take the field like on the 2 yard line or something,
Yeah.
right? And there's like a
Yeah.
big fight, right? Like they run the ball like right up the middle, get stopped. and it's like big fight. Like what's going on in the field there? Like what that's got to be stunned. Like they have to be stunned and
Yeah.
pissed. So
Yeah.
and you guys are fighting in the end zone. I remember
Yeah.
you're
No,
grabbing some. What's that like? What's going
I
on?
mean, I don't know how it all started. We were, yeah, just trying to get off the goal line because we were on like the 2 yard line. So we were trying to get off a little bit, which we ended up doing. But yeah, just, I mean, to be at that like that close to it as a Seahawk player, right? Like to
Yeah.
be that close. And then they were probably just trying to make one like kind of hero play at the end, maybe going a little bit too hard, even though like that the game's essentially over. We would just essentially like six tight diamond formation, and Tom just wasn't like kneeling backwards. He would just like step up and kneel so we weren't losing yards. And I think they were probably trying to like take him out a little bit. But yeah, the fight started. I mean, I remember Gronk being part of it. My buddy Human, who I just saw this weekend, great dude, Hawaiian, like really, really low temperament because he's just naturally like just Polynesians, just like they're always happy, right? But when you got him fired up, man, he was in the end zone fighting. I remember trying to break him up. I like end up tackling him, and it was yeah. But you can't really blame the Seahawks, man. I mean, the difference between winning and losing a Super Bowl, it's such a stark difference. And unfortunately, I was on both sides of it, 3 times as a winning, but one time losing, especially to the Eagles, which was so,
Crazy.
yeah,
Imagine that. So you're
yeah,
there. I mean, let's jump to that. You
yeah,
got one, like you're back in the day with T.O. in '04.
yeah,
We're like, Tom Brady's a pussy. We hate the Patriots and we're
yeah,
sick and McNabb throws up and all that stuff.
uh-huh,
Fast forward a bunch of years, you're playing against them.
yeah,
How surreal is that? You're playing the team that you grew up idolizing.
yeah,
What's in the Super Bowl? What's that like?
yeah. I mean, it was wild. I remember like watching. I think we had won the AFC Championship before the Eagles
Mhm.
played in the NFC Championship, and I remember just like like holding my breath that entire game watching it. Like we can't play the Eagles in this, right? But then they win. I start getting hit up for all the ticket requests, and we had like so many family members there. And I'd say if we had like 40 people there, I'd say at least 30 of them were wearing Eagles gear.
Yeah.
So between
You're
Jenny and
giving
I, and then Jenny's cousin works for the Eagles, so there was even more on through her side. But it was it was really really tough, man. And again, like a tough game to like bring yourself down from because I was so hyped. I mean, playing against the Eagles, I think it was the first time other than in the preseason, first time like I had ever played against the Eagles.
wow.
The year 2015, I broke my leg in the preseason, so I was on IR. They
Mhm.
played them in the regular season, so I didn't actually play. So this was my first crack at the Eagles to play against them, and yeah, it was one of those games, man. I was like super hyped, and then just the way it went, I had never thought you watched Nick Foles go through that whole playoff run, and you just kind of kept thinking, like, all right, well, at the end of the day, he is like Nick Foles, he's a backup.
Yeah.
So you were waiting for like him to drop off or like throw a
Yeah.
tough pick or whatever. And again, I'm thinking that in the Super Bowl, like he can't go toe to toe with Tom Brady, right?
Yeah.
But then the game kept progressing and progressing, and he was stellar. Like, I mean, I am still a quasi Eagles fan, even though I kind of got to bite my lip when they talk about Super Bowl 52, which they always talk about.
That's all we
But
got, man. Come on. That's all we got.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like, man, I got to tip my hat to Nick Foles, man. He was incredible that game and that whole run.
That one play that was crazy in the Super Bowl with Nick Foles is I think it was 4th and 1, and they audible to Ertz. Remember they had that
Mhm.
catch by Ertz. He got hit
Yeah.
right at the line, and they
Yep.
just made it over.
Yeah.
Like that was the one where like you believed a little bit. But as an Eagle fan, I mean, you were growing up back in the day. That game was not over till about 20 minutes
Yeah.
after the ball dropped, and they didn't
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
even after the confetti came down, I wasn't sure that
Yeah.
they won. You know what I mean? When
Yeah.
Tom threw that ball in the air at the end, that
Uh-huh.
went on as an Eagle fan. That ball was in the air for about 6 days,
Yeah, it's
right?
still up there, I
It's
think.
still up there. It's still
Yeah.
up there. Like
Yeah.
someone's catching that. And
Yeah.
that ball was not far. I mean, as an Eagle fan, we watched the replay a million times.
Yeah.
That ball was not far from being caught. Like Gronk
Yeah.
did a good thing of
Yeah.
like bouncing the ball out. Like,
Uh-huh.
and was it Edelman maybe? Like he was
Yeah.
diving at the ball at the
I think
end.
it was, yeah, either him or Chris Hogan.
Okay,
I
one.
remember like, yeah, because we had most of the guys were behind Gronk, and then
Yeah,
he ended up batting it forward, and it was just like Hogan was like a foot too
just
short.
missed it. I mean,
Oh
if
my
it
God.
bounced and he was there, like
Yeah.
and then and that play, like for non-football people, like someone like big like Gronk, he's not the target. It's his job to hit the ball
Yeah.
out to the little guys.
Yeah.
Is that
He's
what it's
trying to
supposed
just keep it alive, unless
to
he can just like get up there
catch it?
and moss everybody. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that and more. Yeah, that's so wild. And then just one epic. You think, well, that's the most epic thing you'll see. Then 2 years later, Super Bowl 51. You're playing the Falcons, Matty
Mhm.
Ice, Matt Ryan, another local guy in Philly. Your guys are down 28-3, right? Is it 28-3
Yeah.
at halftime?
Well, it was 21-3, and then we came out
And they kicked the field. So it's like 21-3 at halftime.
yep.
Bring us to that locker room. All right. So it's
Sure.
21-3. You
Hmm.
walk in. Like, does Belichick address you? Do you go to the positions coach? Like, what happens when you go in that locker room?
Yeah, so I mean, typically you always have, and this was the same in this case. You always have a little bit of time just to kind of like go to the bathroom, get a snack, whatever you want to do, like just have some time to decompress, and then you'd go meet with like your position coach briefly. Offensive coordinator would then address everybody, kind of like worked, what didn't work, what we're going to emphasize going forward, all that stuff, and that was all the same, right? And then Bill brings everybody up, which he always did, and it was very much like I was surprised at how even keel everyone was. Like even Josh McDaniels, even my position coach at the time was Brian Dayball, and he was big on like his whole thing is like stay right here, like never go too low, never go too high. We're always the same, right? And I remember him saying that on the sideline, like, look, just stay right here, right? And I was surprised in the locker room at halftime, like how everyone was just like kind of going about the business, right? Like it wasn't like panicked, oh my God, we're down 21-3 in the Super Bowl. And I remember thinking, like, well, if they can do that to us, like, what's stopping us from doing that to them? Like,
Mhm.
when we go back out there, let's just put 21 on them,
Yeah.
we'll be up. Well, then we go out in the third quarter and they score again. We're having trouble getting things going. And it just felt like one of those games, like we were moving the ball, but things were just always kind of like going the wrong, like on certain plays where you expect like a Patriots to win out in these like certain little
Yeah.
situations that are like one off. Things just weren't going our way, right? And so then it just like all of a sudden things that flipped, and it just everything started to go our way, and then you're like things are happening and you're like, oh man, like we might be able to do this, and I mean, one of like this is this is probably petty to say this, but one of the best things about that game is when they went up 28-3, like seeing them celebrate on their sideline, and like
Yeah.
how just incredibly excited they were.
Yeah.
Arthur Blank's already down there in the third quarter, like celebrating with his guys. And like, I don't blame them. But then, like, to watch their mood deteriorate as we started to come back, oh my God, it still gives me chills. Just like thinking about that. As petty as that is, like, that was one of my favorite things, was just watching those guys deflate as we like started to inflate. And I think like, as unbelievable it was for us to like sit there and like, for me, I mean, I wasn't playing a lot because we just needed to score fast, right? But like to watch Tom go to work, to watch our defense start like making plays. I mean, Dante Hightower with that strip sack, and then like the holding call they called to bump him back out of field goal range at the end. Like everything just was going our way, and like I couldn't believe it, but I couldn't even imagine being on their sideline. Like, how is this happening? But hey, I'm glad to be on my side of it.
That's where you need Dr. Phil, man. Come
Yeah,
and
for
talk to
real.
the group. I mean, you can, and that's such a great lesson. Like we talked earlier, a couple of life lessons I wrote down. You talked about time management,
Mhm.
consistency, endurance, a couple of points you brought
Yep.
up. ego, man. Like ego is
Yeah.
the enemy. You can't celebrate too early, especially
Yeah.
when you have someone like Belichick and Brady on the other
Mhm.
side. I mean, that's Freddy Krueger, man. They don't die.
Yeah.
You cannot celebrate early with that. That's crazy. So if you look back, all the time you spent, so two epic people to sport, Brady and Belichick. If you had to think back, what's the lesson you learned from Tom Brady? All the time you spent with him, everything you saw, everything you did, your experiences together. What's the lesson, the life lesson to take away of your time with Brady?
With him, I think it was kind of two things, but really they worked together. Was one, the way you treat people. He, and I touched on this earlier as like how personable and approachable he was, but he was just always like the teammate that we needed. And it was always like outwardly focused, like he was never really too concerned about like his own perception and like what is going on with him. Like it was always like outward, what do I need to be for my team? And that was something that, like now as a father, I feel like I take that into account a lot, is to like, this isn't just about me and the way I feel and how tired I am or whatever. Like I need to focus on what's best for my kids and what's best for my wife, and like how can I be the best version of myself for the greater good rather than just my own like personal needs. Yeah. Is like, how do I be the best version of myself? Well, he's, I mean, now on record, like the way he took care of his body, the things he put into his body, everything is so regimented on a daily basis. And that's why he had the success later into his years. Honestly, like not only all that stuff, but just the way he prepared, the way he went to practice, all his steps, they were so perfectly consistent on a week to week basis. And that was like his special sauce. And I think we're starting to see it now as a broadcaster. Like you hear him talk, you hear him analyze football. There's nothing that he hasn't seen.
Yeah.
He was so intensely dialed into like what he had to do to help us win. And man, it was just incredible to see. And like, so man, if we can just all take a little bit out of that book and just like be more consistent in whatever you want to accomplish, right? Whether it's running a business or being a father or being a husband or anything, trying to get in better shape. Like it's consistency is so important, because you can't be, hey, I'm the best dad this second and then turn around and be like, you know what, screw them. Like you gotta always be there. So it's a great life lesson that I took from him.
Consistency, preparation, demeanor, team before
Yeah.
me. I mean, so much of that. And just taking care of yourself, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's so good. How about the same question, Bill Belichick? I mean, I think 8 total Super Bowls, like maybe 6 as a coach, 2 with the Giants. Just greatest coach ever in the game.
Mm-hmm.
What you learn from him?
Attention to details, 100%. And that was his biggest thing. Not only as, oh, you gotta know each little like intricate part of each play, which was a big part of it, but keenly in tune with the game, the evolution of the game, like schemes and how they matched up. I mean, it was insane. I tell this a lot, but we'd have Saturday night meetings the day before games, and he'd always go over maybe 3 4 key points in this next game, right? He'd be like, look, this is what's going to happen, this is what it's going to come down to, we have to win in these areas, right? Like third down or turnovers or whatever. And he'd like make little anecdotal statements, and at the time you're like, yeah, that's just generally football. But then I swear 75%, if not more, of those games the next day would come down to like exactly those things. And I think he was just so good at like reading between the lines and like understanding the whole bigger picture, because he was so in tune to the little details. And what one thing I loved about Bill was he was so good at like understanding the history, not only of that particular team and that particular coach, but just like the history of the game of football. And he used to always break it down. Like when we would play the Lions, his dad coached for the Lions. So he'd go back into the film room and find like these old time film of the Lions from like the 60s. Right. And he'd put it on and we'd And I remember like just sitting there like, what do we need to see this for? But it all kind of like would build up to like, this is why the Lions are who the way they are, like who they are. Um, and in some weird way, you'd find like a lesson in that, right? And so like the history of the game and how that carries forward and how that translates into like the way games are played now. If we can understand all that and you can like use that in a broader perspective on everyday life and business and all that stuff, man. Like I remember going back after I retired, going back, I spoke to the team and I asked him like, what are some of your favorite books? I asked Bill, right? And his first response was winning. Oh, I have it. It's the guy that founded GE. I forget his name.
Jack Welch.
Jack
No,
Welch. Yeah.
okay.
Winning by Jack Welch was his first response. He's like, I took so many lessons on how to build a team from that book. He started like pulling out things from his memory, and it was impressive, man. Just the way like the data that he had in his head and the way he would like use that going forward, man. It was really something.
I love it. So basically hit with Bill, like the priorities, like know your three key priorities, do the reading, do the homework, know the history, because history's prologue to what may be happening tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then like that attention to detail. He knew what was going to happen before it happened. Like it's
Yeah.
because it was so proud. That's so
Yeah.
awesome.
Do
How
you
about
watch
that?
any of the Manning cast?
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, he's so good. Bill, you think he's some like curmudgeon, like he's like just
Yeah.
some grumpy dude, like, being way outside, just watching him press
Uh-huh.
conferences. I see that he has a podcast with GM Michael Lombardi, and
Yeah.
he's funny, man. He's
Yeah.
funny, witty. He's got a great personality.
Yeah.
He's like way more like talkative and
Oh
engaging
yeah.
than you would think when you just see him on the press conferences, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's what
Oh,
I always said because I get that question a lot. Like, what was Bill truly like? Was he really like kind of the grumpy old man that the media portrays him as? But really, he was just trying to do that. Just really, it was kind of just an act to be funny, like to be like, I don't want to be here, and I'm going to let you know that I don't want to be here talking to you guys, right? But he's got the last laugh in all in those 20 some years of being grumpy up on a mic and saying the same thing over and over. Like he got the last laugh. So who's really the comedic genius,
that's, yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely coming out of his shell, man. I love to see, all the stuff he's doing in the media now. And this is great, man. Like I just tuned in on Monday night to him on the Manicast with the Eagles, and still impresses me so much to just hear him analyze the game and certain little details that might just go by unnoticed. Like he notices it all, man, and it all means something to him.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate that. How about this wrapping up here? Transitioning to what you're doing now, your entrepreneurial journey. Would you remember last time you walked off the field? Did you know it was your
Yeah,
last time?
yeah, yeah. So 2019 season, week 2 in Miami. That training camp was a weird one for me. It was the first time I felt this is like tough for me to even say, but I felt scared to play football.
Mm.
I knew that I had something going on in me that like was out of my control and I couldn't really like figure it out. My body just didn't feel like it was totally prepared. Every other year I was like, look, I'm going in, I'm face first, like I'm not shying away from anything. And in that training camp, I remember I started shifting my focus as to like how can I go out to practice and get better. I started shifting to how can I go out to practice and just get through it.
Mhm.
Like I didn't want to be exposed. I started, long story short, I had this thing in my spinal cord that I didn't really know was going on, and so my spinal cord was getting like compressed and bruised, and I started losing feeling in my hands, sometimes my legs, and it was like super scary as a fullback because I had to do so much like physical contact with my head that like my spine kept getting compressed. And so like it started getting so sensitive that I would get pushed. And like I remember one drill in practice, 2019 training camp, I got pushed in the back and my arms went numb. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? Like,
Mhm.
so the first week we placed the Steelers at home. It was a Thursday night game because we just won the Super Bowl. So go in, and I remember multiple times in that game, like signaling to my tight end coach, like, "Look, I can't feel my arms, right? But I was going through it because I was like, no, it's not serious. Let me just finish this out. Made it through that game. Next week comes up, and I remember like before that game in Miami, like, man, I'm like worried that something might happen. And I remember talking to my wife Saturday night before the game. She was like, "Can you just not play?" And I was like, "Babe, what am I gonna say? Like Saturday night, like, no, I'm not ready to go." So I go out there, you know, finally like hit somebody to the point where it was just like electric shock through my body and come off. They check me out, thought it was stingers. I shake it off, go back in, finish the game. Then I get an MRI the next day and they found this thing in my spinal cord. So that like was the last time. And I remember like walking off kind of knowing like I'm probably done playing football. But at that point, it was 26 years of doing it. It's always tough, man. And like Bill, I remember Bill saying like, look, nobody can play football forever, and like what you did was great. The time that you gave to the game. Sorry, I know I can get long
Yeah,
winded.
no, no, keep going.
Yeah, no, it's that was tough. It's still tough for me. Like I sometimes like just wish so much that I could go back and play because it was just a dream come true, man.
Dude, thank you for sharing that. Dude, that's remarkable. When you walked off, how'd you feel? Did you feel you had to be at peace, man? You gave everything you had.
Yeah, I mean, I remember like obviously coming to the realization that I would never do it again because it was honestly like it was living a childhood dream every day. Going to work was like, oh my god, I can't believe that I get to go to work and do this and play this game, and it fills me with so much pride and joy. But knowing, I remember being in the doctor's office when they told me. My wife was with me, we had our daughter, she was like a few months old at the time, and he told me like what was going on, and he said like you should probably think about not playing football ever again. And I was like I knew that that was probably coming. I just didn't really want to hear it. But I remember looking at my wife and my daughter and thinking like, well, I now have like a new life to live. Like this football isn't my only thing. It's what I did, but it's not who I am. Like now I'm dad, and I'm my wife calls me babe. Like I'm babe. Like I gotta be the man that they need me to be, not just who I want to be. And so that made the decision,
Yeah.
a lot easier to swallow that pill, man.
So you basically took a lesson from Brady. You put
Yeah.
the team before me. It's like
Yeah.
we before me, right? So
Yes, sir.
you put your team, your home team, in front of another year in the league, or
Yep.
who knows what happens. You played another year and got hit really hard. Yeah, that's great, man. That takes courage and balls and awareness, and that's amazing. Fast forward to your entrepreneurial journey. So, Solberry, tell us about it,
Yeah.
man. What you doing now?
Yeah. So upon retirement, I knew that I wanted to give my time and my energy back to my kids, right? So I wanted to be able to control my time.
Mhm.
So I thought the best path to do that was entrepreneurship. I ended up taking advantage of a NFLPA benefit that the trust provide. It's a entity that kind of helps the transition in former NFL players, and they gave me access and education in the entrepreneurial space. I ended up using that to really like network and get engaged with a lot of people in business and how to like vet existing businesses, franchise opportunities, stuff like that. I ended up using all that knowledge and those connections. And at first, I thought I wanted to do a fitness franchise because fitness was always something I was passionate about.
Mhm.
And I thought that was a natural, progression for an athlete. And ended up going down that route, but not really feeling comfortable with it, pulling out. And then organically, an opportunity to buy Solberry came about. Solberry is a smoothie acai bowl place in Brigantine.
Love
I
it.
had been a customer there for years, loved it, loved everything they did. They built it out of a shipping container. It's got a very unique feel. And I met the owner. He was looking to sell. This was like right after COVID. And I said, you know what, I think this is what I need to do. So I took it over from him. And now I'm in my third year running it. It's been great. I've now opened up a new location in Ocean City, New Jersey. And yeah, man, it's been really fun. Like I said, I went to school for engineering, so I don't have much of a business acumen or background, but it's been very fulfilling to kind of just go to work and like swim in waters that I don't know much about and
Yeah.
just, kind of find myself in a new venture.
I'm just a huge acai fan. You talk about health and wellness and
Mhm.
recovery. Is there anything more important than eating? What you put in your body
Yeah.
is working out's important, but you get past 35 years old,
Yeah.
80% is what you eat, 20% is how you work out, right?
Yeah.
Because you
Yeah.
can just say you had beer, pizza, wings
Yeah.
every day. You could
Yeah.
have the greatest trainer in the world work you out 5 days a week. You're going to be in horrible shape, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
acai, what Pitiyao or acai? Where are you? If you had to get a bowl, what are you doing?
We have a particular acai bowl in at Solberry. It's a Tahitian moon, so it's topped with banana, granola, honey,
So good.
blueberries, and then natural peanut butter.
So
And
good.
just the peanut butter mixed with acai,
It's killer.
it's like, yeah, oh my God, it's great,
So
man.
good. How about what's your smoothie? If you're blending a smoothie up, what's your favorite?
So my smoothie at home I make for the kids almost every morning is it's very, very simple. Frozen banana, so we
Yep.
don't have to use ice. We freeze the banana like the night before, throw that right in the blender, then simply just I always put a little protein powder in it,
Hmm.
and then cacao and coconut milk. And
Okay,
that's
good.
sometimes peanut butter if you want
Yep.
extra flavor, and then top that with granola and honey, man. And
So good.
smoothie bowls every morning.
What's your protein powder? Where you at with that?
I've bounced around, but right now I'm big on Jocko. I
Or
like
the
that he uses monk fruit extract as opposed to like artificial sweeteners. I
Yeah.
think just because it says fruit, I
It's
love it
so
better.
good. And you guys do coffee there too, right?
Yeah, we do coffee. Yeah,
What's your coffee? Are you a coffee guy?
I am. But I'm so my wife, obviously Italian and espresso. They put a sip of coffee to their lip and they know whether it's good or bad. I
Yeah.
drink any and all coffee,
Okay, gotcha.
always black,
Okay.
just for the caffeine content, to be honest. But down at Solberry, we use Harry and Beans, which is a local roaster,
Awesome.
um, and he's got a special blend of all the different Arabica and all the different style bean blends. And yeah, we got a nice little thing going down there.
That's so good. And eating healthy in the beach is not easy to do because we've
Yeah.
been in Ocean City, is a place where we took our kids for years. And there's like one spot on the boardwalk where you can eat healthy. Like
Yeah.
everything else is funnel cake and pizza and
Yeah.
ice cream, right? You guys got a great niche there. What's the biggest lesson you learned so far? Opening up the two stores as an entrepreneur.
Just kind of being comfortable, being uncomfortable, like
Mhm.
learning to, because that was one thing I kind of struggled with was like, now all of a sudden I'm taking this football hat off and I'm putting like an entrepreneur hat on. I had a very hard time like with imposter syndrome. Look, this isn't
Mhm.
my thing.
Yep.
And I would always I would always lead off with that. Like, look, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Mhm.
But then over time, I learned like, hey, there's a lot of people out there doing stuff and they have no clue what they're
Mhm.
doing. You kind of got to fake it till you make it. So I just learned to like, look, like, don't sell myself short. Just because I've never done something before doesn't mean that I'm not going to be good at it or that
Mhm.
I'm going to struggle like with, picking up how to do it. So yeah, just kind of like being okay with like learning through failure or like just kind of throwing my hat to things and seeing how it works out.
Yes. Being comfortable, being uncomfortable. That is
Yeah.
just such a great mindset. Wrapping up here, this has been phenomenal. How about this, Jimmy? We talked about so much. I mean, from starting from Boyertown, I mean, to Brown as the defensive lineman, to being waived by the Bengals,
Yeah.
the great names I heard, the Oklahoma Yard Dogs. If you get three Super Bowls, now you're an entrepreneur. If you could have everyone listening take just one lesson away from everything we discussed, what would that lesson be?
One lesson I think that kind of is like the overarching theme of my life is really that nothing beats hard work. And I know that's kind of like cliche, but really I found my niche in the NFL doing the jobs that nobody else wanted to do. Like nobody really wants to run and hit Vince Wilfork in the A gap, like giving up 50, 60 pounds with my face, and it was a very unglamorous position, but I took a lot of pride in it and I took it very, very serious. And I knew the way I needed to prepare my body. And so I just consistently, again, like I'm tying all this shit together, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to just consistently work hard at it, no matter how great it might seem or whatever. And like over time, you will become good. Like you will become good enough. It doesn't matter where you start, your whole backstory. Like you just got to be consistent and work and work and work and work. And eventually you will get to where you want to be. And that was like the whole story of my life, man. It was just, I didn't necessarily always start on the path that I set out to start on, but it really wasn't the start that mattered. It was where I finished. And there was just a lot of hard work in between, man. So, yeah.
That's such a great. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. Don't stop, keep grinding. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
I mean, you exemplify that in all you do, man. Last question, Jimmy Devlin. If is a fun question we ask everyone at the
Yeah.
end. If you had to get a quote or a saying tattooed on your body,
Mm.
what would that quote or motto say?
Oh, man. Very, very interesting question. I feel like I go a lot of ways. I mean, the one thing I always, for a long time when I would sign things, I would always put never quit. That was a big thing at Brown. We had a guy, Lawrence Rubida, who was there a couple of years before me, died. He was a captain. He ended up passing away from cancer, brain cancer. And his whole thing was never quit. So I kind of like took that and it kind of fit with like my whole story too. Was I never really wanted to quit, even though people would have said, many times after I graduated from Brown, I was flying down to Oklahoma to work out for an arena football team. They would have just said like, yo, just use your degree, like go get a job, but I just never really wanted to quit on this dream. And so um never quit would be one of them. Oh man, family over everything. I think at this
Wow.
point in my life probably means more to me than most. Just how important family is at the end of the day, because this is the legacy we're all going to leave on this earth. Is your kids and your wife and the way you've made them feel, the relationships you had with your distant family. Like that's what's going to be left on this earth, not you know the film, and like who cares
Yeah.
about that shit. So
Never quit, family over everything, legacy, relationships, man. You just crushed this. You're crushing life, man. Jimmy, I want to end this interview on what Coach Bill Belichick said upon your retirement. This is from Coach Bill Belichick, like 8-time Super Bowl winner. To some people, James Devlin may be unsung in terms of publicity and fame, but to his coaches and teammates, he is one of the most appreciated and respected players we ever had. In football, there are a lot of tough, unselfish, dependable people who bring positive leadership on a daily basis, but the name James Devlin represents those qualities at an elite level. A tribute to the impact James had on our success. Of the 5 seasons in which he appeared in every game, we won 3 Super Bowls. Any team would be fortunate to have James Devlin type player on its roster, but the reality is he is a rarity, and we are very fortunate he was a Patriot.
yeah,
That's Bill Belichick on the retirement of James Devlin. The guest is James Devlin's 3-time Super Bowl winner, now entrepreneur on the Jersey Shore. Dude, it was so great to connect with you, man. Thank you.
likewise, man.
It's been an honor. Dude, definitely going to hit you up when I'm down the beach,
Yeah,
getting some
please
smoothies.
do. Please
Hello
do,
to
man. Yeah, I mean, hopefully we can meet. I know we're like distant family through marriage, but hopefully we can meet sometime, man.
that. It would be an honor, man. Let's do that. And dude, I'd love to send you. Are you familiar with Ryan Holiday?
Yeah,
Yeah. Do
yeah,
you
yeah.
Daily Stoic? Are you an owner of that book?
I do. I don't own it, but I know about it.
Okay, so as a small gift of being on the show, man, I'm going to send
Oh,
you
thank
the
you,
Daily
man.
Stoic. I send it the guest. It's an amazing book. You'll love it. And
Awesome.
awesome, dude. I appreciate you. It's been an honor to speak with you. Such an incredible career, and wish you nothing but success in Solberry.
Thanks. Right back at you, man. I really love what you're doing. Like I said in my text, man, this whole story, kind of like the unsung hero, how guys make themselves into who they are, man. I think there needs to be more attention on these types of stories. So I really applaud what you're doing here, man. And I wish you nothing but the best. If I can ever, help connect you with anything, just let me know. And yeah, man, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it, man. Rock on, bro. Keep kicking ass.
All right, man. You too.
Take care, Cajun. Thank you, brother.
Later.
Peace.